that during the public, I questioned that during the meeting, and the CEO was not happy. So he asked the chair of our committee to see him. And then the next meeting, I was kicked out. Anyhow, so then I immediately I joined the MUHC committee immediately at that time. And first I was with the long-term care patients at the Montreal Chest. Now they have moved in 2015 to Camille Lefebvre. So there's a floor of about 20 patients there from the chest. Most of them from that time have died. So then I also became, not long, maybe in 2010 or something, I became the co-chair of the MUHC Users Committee for a while. And then I said, okay, we'll train a new person. And then we train a new person. Those persons resigned. So I came back. I think I did that 3 times just to help the situation. And I also joined the board of directors for 4 years at the MUHC, and also the board of directors at the Conseil pour la protection des malades. So that's about it. So I prepared a little presentation, will be short, but I'll try to go into first I'll try and give you a short history of users committees. You know, they started mostly and under the influence of Claude Brunet, who is the founder of the CPM, who was the brother of Paul Brunet. The committee started mostly in long-term care facilities, and they were called Comité de bénéficiaires at that time. Now, when there was with the Minister Rochon reform in 1992, it was written in the act there would be also users committees in acute care. So long-term and acute care. But actually, it's only under Monsieur Couillard in 2005 that it became mandatory for all institutions to have users committees. So, for instance, if you look at the MUHC history, there were committees before 2005. I think there was one at the Royal Vic. There was a long-term, an inpatients committee at the Chest. So these existed before, but when it became mandatory in 2005, and it's the act said, as it does say in the bill here, and we'll get to this right now, said 1 committee per institution. Now, the word institution is very important because you have to distinguish it from facility. Now, when Monsieur Barrette, I give you a little background so that you can understand all what's behind this, what I'm going to say. In 2015, the Loi sur l'organisation du réseau, that's chapter 7.2, came into effect on April the 1st, 2015. The act clearly says in section 203 that all the existing, all the committees that existed prior to April the 1st, 2015 will continue to exist and have budget. So that, for instance, you know, with the Barrette reform, he created those big things called the CUSM and the CIS and other institutions that are not within these territorial organizations, like the CHUM, the MUHC, l'Institut de Cardiologie, and I think there's one also in Quebec. These are independent. So what I wanted to say was that with the bill now, it clearly says that there's one users committee per institution. And it doesn't talk about what happened in the Barrette reform. So this means that a lot of users committees will disappear. For instance, no more users committee at the Jewish, no more users committee at Santa Cabrini, no more users committee at Jean Talon, no more users committee at Sacré-Cœur. You name it, St. Mary's, all of this, they will disappear. They will only be committees for the CUS and the CIS. And of course, for the MUHC, it doesn't change.
So that's like the QC?
No,
But it would keep only the QCs then, or?
The QC will, well, the users committee will pretty much be the QC, but all the others will disappear. All the CLSC had users committees that will disappear. So I just wanted to draw your attention to section 1 of the bill. I'll read it to you. The purpose of this act is to put in place an effective health and social service system. Now, the word effective is interesting because it reflects the mentality of the Monsieur Dubé. I'm not saying that it's bad, but he insists a lot on efficiency and social services, particularly by facilitating access to safe, quality health services and social services, enhancing coordination of the different components of the system, and this is the important thing I wanted to stress here, and bringing communities closer to decisions related to the organization and provision of services. Well, I'm sorry, but in my book, as far as users committees are concerned, is doing the opposite of his objective in the first section of the act. Not saying that he's not doing good in other areas, but today we're speaking of users committees, and that's where I think it's not good. Now, if we, the whole thing I want to stress today is that just what I've said, not much proximity. And I think the old bill, as far as users committees are concerned and residents committee, but there's a little difference. I mean, it's an erosion of the civic participation and democracy. And this is what I want to show to you today. Now, if we look at section 31, one of the members of some, oh, I'm sorry, I just want to see what's up. Okay, one of the members of Santé Québec's board of directors, so that's the board of directors of the agence he's going to create with that bill, other than its chair and the president and chief executive officer, must be appointed after consultation with bodies that are representative of the members on users committees. So what he's saying is that there will be a member that will be appointed after consultation with the bodies that are representative of the members of on users committees. I don't really know what the sentence means, but it's some sort of consultation. It's not, I don't read it as something saying that, okay, there's a place for a member coming out of the users committees, but there will be a democratic process by which this person will have to first be nominated as a candidate and then elected. It's just like chosen after some kind of consultation. I don't know what it really means. Now, again, the agence, yes, Ingrid?
Sometimes the French version is a little bit more specific and better than the English translation. Is it?
Yeah,
any
well, I didn't
better in
check
the
it.
French or not even?
Yeah, well, I didn't really check it. I
Okay.
didn't have the time, but
Oh, no problem. Okay.
I don't think it will be
Substantially different.
much more clearer, but it's something to check. Now, the agence, the agence will also have the National Watchdog Committee, or if you want, Comité de Vigilance. And in art sections 47, it says Santé Québec's board of directors must, in addition to the committees, it is required to establish under the establish a national watchdog committee. The National Watchdog Committee sees to it that Santé Québec Board of Directors exercises its function and powers in such a manner as to promote the quality of health and respect for users' rights. To that end, the committee must, in particular, then it says all the what it has to do, and just checking my notes. So here again, I mean, I don't really see any participation of users in that watchdog committee of the board of directors. I don't know. Now, let's go to the National Users Committee. So that's something new. You know, the idea was that the minister wants that the agence has some kind of a national user committee that reports to the agence and tells him what's going on, what's wrong, what needs to be improved, quality of service, and so on. Now, the members of the National Users Committee that Santé Québec is required to form are appointed by Santé Québec Board of Directors. So you see, again, it's top to bottom, not bottom up. Okay, the term is 4 years. Now, again, Santé Québec's bylaws prescribes the number of members on the committee and its operating rules. So, again, the National Users Committee is composed of members from users committees of public and private institutions, of representatives of the groups of users or from users committees, and of one person exercises management responsibilities under the immediate authority of the president and chief CEO of the agence. The members from users committees are to be alternately from various health regions. Okay. So that's a good idea, but he could have said again that these members are delegated from the base to the that national users committee. Now let's move to the institution council. Now, first of all, it's not written that way in the act, but the consequence of this is that no more users committees, no more board of directors, I'm sorry. So, you know, for instance, when I was on the board, that was prior to Barrett's reform, there were 2 members designated by the users committee to sit on the board, not 1. Barrett said only 1. We protested, and then what he sort of came up with is that because it's the same philosophy, everything from the top. Now he names the persons on the board. Before that, a lot of people were elected by the population. When I was on the board, we were 2 from the users committee, and I think there were at least 2, I can't remember exactly the number, who were designated by the population, elected by the population. For instance, I don't know if maybe some of you know Gwen Nakos. She's was very instrumental in building can support. She was a cancer patient, but she was an elected member on the board. Now, with Barrett, their name, but he said, okay, you lost 1, but we'll give you 1, we'll name 1. So you see, it's the same philosophy here. Sections 107 says the institution council, so that's the body that will replace the board of directors, is composed of the president, the CEO, and the following persons appointed for a 4-year term by Santé Québec boards of director. Okay. 5 users of the institution. So it doesn't say that some of these users have to be members of the users committee. If they're not, are they representing patients? On what mandate? Are they sitting there as individuals? I mean, a lot of users committees have members that have been sitting on those committees for years. They know the institution, they know their facility, they know many patients, they have a representation role. Now, 5 users chosen from way up there in Quebec City. Okay. Now, again, 116, the bylaws of Santé Québec institution set out the institution council's operating rules. So again, everything from the top. Now, if we move to the Watchdog Committee, Comité de Vigilance, but I'm talking not about the National Watchdog Committee in section 122, but of the Institution Watchdog Committee. It exists at this now under the Act. And under the Act, one member is ex officio from the Users Committee. Okay, now, same thing. It's one person will be a user. Again, the term user, it's interesting because in the present act, the word user is not defined. In the bill, they defined it. And they said it's a person who receives services from a public or private institution. So I guess it also includes long-term care residents. But again, if we go back to section 107, when it talks about 5 users of the institution, nothing here guarantees that the long-term care residents will be represented there. I think it's a failure. It's not correct. So same thing with the Watchdog Committee. We don't know if I mean, it has to be more precise and defined. Now, 138, a risk management committee. So that's a committee that existed, I think, with the pandemic. It disappeared at the MUHC. I asked questions about it. I never got an answer about it. But at the MUHC, it was called COCAR. And it met nearly every month. I was a member of COCAR. We were 2 from the Users Committee, and I was there for many years. And again, here, there is, I think, let me check. Yeah, it talks about users, but nothing about the Users Committee. Now, 143. So we talked a bit about that. A Users Committee is established for each Santé Québec institution. So here you have it clearly. So it's only the CUSM and the CIS and those institutions that are not merged, like the MUHC. So pretty much it's the same thing as what's in the Act at the moment. It doesn't really change a thing for the MUHC as such. There's a lot of changes for those who are in the CUSM and the CIS. Okay, and then it says Santé Québec bylaws determine the composition of users committees and residents committees. The bylaws may provide for the formation of subcommittees. So it doesn't really change things here because, I mean, the composition, I mean, it's already determined in the Act that it's a minimum of 5 or a minimum of 3. And I don't see a lot of change in this area. The one interesting thing, though, is in section I just checked it before our meeting. In section 149, when where it talks about the functions of a users committee, there's a little tiny change in the vocabulary. In section 212 of the present act, it says that the users committee may assess or evaluate the degree of satisfaction with regard to services. So, for instance, when I was a member of the CUC, shouldn't call it CUC, but the users committee, it's a bad habit. We did several surveys with the collaboration of the institution, but we were the initiators. We were in control. Now what it says now, I will read it to you. To foster that's the function, to foster the improvement of the quality of living conditions of users and residents, and to participate in the assessment of the degree of satisfaction with regard to the services. So this leads me to think that it's the function of the institution, but you may participate in this. It's not a role that is given to you precisely as it is now in the act in section 212. You go and read it and you'll find the difference. Okay, let me see. That's pretty much what I had to say. I don't know if you had
yes,
questions.
You
Yeah.
feel like that is I just read them both, the old one and this one, and you're right, to assess the degree of satisfaction versus to participate in the assessment. And you think this is an intentional distinction that they're putting in there?
Well, I've worked with lawyers all my life, so they don't change if they're satisfied with what is in the wording of the present act, they don't change it. Paste copy.
Right.
But why did they change the wording here?
Yeah, no, it's a good question and disturbing, although I think it adds work for, I mean, I'm not sure the advantage other than to be able to structure an assessment to not actually bring to light the problems that may exist to the degree that they exist. I mean, is this really?
Yeah, I don't know, but I can tell you that when I did surveys, they were all stiff there, and what do you want to do? And they didn't like it because they were not in control. So I mean, it's certainly a question. I mean, I will go to the parliamentary hearing with Paul Brunet, and it's certainly a question that we will raise and ask some clarification from the minister. But I think again is that, you see, we're moving to a function of more advisory, like the board of directors was a governance body. Now it will become like an advisory forum. The Comité National des Usagers is advisory to the agence. So it's clearly, to me, an erosion of participation of the citizens and the patients in the mandate of the health network.
Deborah, you had a
Yeah.
comment.
Yeah, Pierre, I'm wondering if they have taken away the users committees at large institutions like the Jewish and St. Mary's,
Yeah.
how is this population's needs going to be heard or represented?
That was one of my first remarks concerning section 1, bringing communities closer to decisions. So how is that going to be
No.
with the example you give? No.
Wow, that's astonishing.
The only thing I wanted to mention, I forgot, was that they abolish a lot of these users committees, but they maintain all residence committees.
Well, that's only a subsection of the population.
Yeah, absolutely. But you see, it doesn't say in the act we're abolishing these committees. You have to read in all the time. But it's interesting to say that they do mention that all the residence committees are maintained. Why do they say that? Because they abolish the others, eh?
I do find it, oh, sorry, Deborah, are you?
No, I'm just astounded, frankly.
We're
Well, again, it's
speak to out of shock. Okay.
Yeah.
again, it's a good example of the less and less participation on the ground of people.
Yeah.
To the life of their facility. That's it.
Well, I mean, I think even now there's an issue with representation. You can keep a residence committee, but if they don't have a voice to be heard,
Again, yeah.
it doesn't matter. So the MUHC is sort of unusual in the sense that we have only one residence committee and they can
Yeah.
designate a member to our users committee.
Yeah.
But all these other institutions under which there are many residence committees, they need to designate one amongst all the residence committees. So if you're lucky, your residence committee will be the one who has elected or, you know, the person to represent them, but all the others are sort of stuck in the same.
Absolutely. You are right.
Situation. So it's really only MUHC that covers all bases.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fairly. In general, in terms of this, do you have numbers? How many users committees currently exist? And with the reform, how many will exist?
Well, I don't know with the reform how many will exist, but a lot less because the only thing how you can find out is determine how many residence committees in the province or these state, and then one committee per CUS, one per CIS, and one for the non-merged institutions. So I don't know how many residence committee. I think altogether, residents and users committees, it's close to 600 in the province.
Wow. And you don't know how many of those are users, because users, I guess it's going to be that 30 or 34, somewhere in that space of.
Yeah, exactly.
But there obviously were many, many, many more.
Oh yeah, look, all the CLSC,
Right, to the order of, you know, 10.
all the other hospitals. I mean, there are many hospitals. There's the Barry Memorial in Ormstown. There's a hospital in Cowansville. There's a hospital in Saint Jean. There's a hospital in Saint Jérôme. Many hospitals. Many. So
So,
it will. I don't have the figure. It's a good question. Somebody would have to do their homework, but I mean, I think it's a very significant number that will disappear.
I think it's a good piece of ammunition, or it's a good argument. And when you're, making an argument to the government, to the population, to say, in this reform, we are going from 275 users committees to 34. I think
Yeah.
it's a very dramatic
Yeah.
point.
Well,
So I think it's
to tell you,
of those stats.
absolutely, to tell you the truth, I don't know well, Mr. Dubé. I met him 3 times. And frankly, I don't think that he's aware of that. These things are written by lawyers, and the lawyers work with administrations in Quebec, the ministry. I would be very surprised that it is his intention, knowing a little about him. But anyhow, our role, the CPM, is to bring to him those questions and those comments, and fighting to make it sure that democracy, civic participation is preserved to the best.
Yeah, I think if he was aware of it, we need to be vocal about the numbers and the shrinkage. And if he's not, all the more reason to make aware of it. And even the change, that subtle change in assesses versus participates in the assessment. And you're right, there's a lot of copying and pasting, but actually the order, even though the content of the reform of 15 and this one, the one that's currently ratified, is very similar. The order of points is a little bit different, which means that someone might not have copied and pasted, someone might have read and retyped, and it literally, I mean, I know you say it's a lawyer and they don't make mistakes, everybody makes mistakes. So I think these are the things that need to be brought to the attention so that it can be amended. This hasn't passed yet.
Sure.
We need to make sure that people are aware of it. It doesn't help as much to, check amongst ourselves. We really have to make sure that someone, I don't know how it's done, but makes the point that here are some issues, specifics within the law that are concerning, be it a tiny point like the wording of how surveys and satisfaction is assessed, or something enormous like the, cutting out the elimination of 10-fold number of users committees. I mean, it's just. I'm also concerned, I have to say, for the appointment on that institution council versus board of directors. It sounds wonderful, 5 users. And that was my question, is how are these, who's pointed out, how, whatever. And look at the dysfunction. I need not tell you of what's gone on just within the users committee at the MUHC. Are we now going to populate an institution council with a mix of people who have demonstrated that they're unable to function collaboratively? This is potentially a real mess.
And again, those 5 persons are nominated by Quebec City.
I mean, is it a roller ball? Are they just like pulling balls out of Howard?
I don't know. Well, I guess they will ask the administration of the institution for some names or things like that. But again, it's top down.
Right. And then you have people sitting on this council who aren't on the users committee. So, I mean, how do you, it's bizarre.
Again, what's the, there's the council on which there aren't necessarily member of users committees. and then there are users committees. What's the link between the two? And what's the role of each of the two regarding the institution and the life of the institution? It's not well attached.
Because that was my question. Are these 5 populated from the users committee? But no, not necessarily.
No, it doesn't say. There's no obligation.
Absolutely crazy. And then there's no liaison. I mean, imagine if none of us were sitting on that, there's just an information gap and a communication gap that is
Absolutely.
a ridiculous way to function, but
Here, do these other organizations, do they know that they're losing their users committee?
Like what, the RPCU, you mean, or?
No, like the Jewish and St. Mary's and Sacré
Well, I
Cœur.
hope so. Yes, I know from at least the I don't know if you know her, Irene Demchuk. She's
Sounds-
she's the Siobhan of the CUSM de l'Ouest, Centre-Ouest.
Okay,
And she wrote to Paul Brunet and me about this, and they clearly know that they're going to lose a lot of the CLSC Jeanne Mans. That's gone. The Jewish, that's gone, and maybe others. I don't know.
do you think
like-
there might be some organization formed to represent all of these users committees that are being lost to try and fight that?
I don't know, because I one other thing as we talk, I was thinking about the rehab centers.
Yeah.
Gone.
Oh.
Bye-bye.
they are aware because there was someone at one of these webinars or meetings from Constance Lethbridge or whatever, so they are aware.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Going to be.
Wow.
But what do we do? I mean, it doesn't suffice to simply be aware. We have to now.
something.
Yeah, well, the thing is, how are we going to fight this?
I have no idea.
Wow.
But it would be nice to know that you're right, that Minister Dubé, that, he has an enormous portfolio. I know that he
Mhm.
doesn't, can't keep track of every detail, but, and needs people to point it out. So you want at least to know that he's aware of the repercussions of what the implications of these
Yeah.
changes are
Yeah,
on the ground. It may
Yeah.
sound fantastic on paper. His intentions may be very noble. I don't believe for a minute all the accusations that, he doesn't care about the patients and this and that. That's nonsense. I don't believe that at all.
No.
But he still might need some guidance with how to do it in a way that is as productive as possible.
yeah, well, he clearly said, and I think in his mind, it's a bill, donc it's a projet de loi, it's a work in progress. So, because I don't see that this will be sanctioned rapidly unless they use I don't know how you call that in English, the baillon. Baillon.
Notwithstanding clause?
No,
No,
it's,
they don't have to because they're.
The baillon is when they do it without debate.
Yeah. It's,
yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
But
it's,
what's the name? How do you call that in
yeah,
English?
there's a term, we need our secretary who's a lawyer here with us. It's,
But it's exactly what Alex said is you say, okay,
right, it's a
we're
unilateral.
not
task without-
progressing rapidly. It's taking too long in the study section by section of the bill. So we put an end to this. We all sit in the National Assembly. This is where all the different steps are taking place rapidly, and that's it. But I'd be surprised that they would do that with something that is so huge.
I would be stunned. This is the health.
But you never know with the CAC.
But no, this is, I think, time and time again with polls, the number one concern about, of Quebecers. I don't think they would have the nerve to do that, but
Yeah, I'd be surprised, but who knows?
okay. And now just to clarify, getting back to the single institution, just because this is relevant as we meet with our subcommittees and try to
Yeah,
clarify. So the MUHC has been a single institution since like 1997 it merged.
yeah, I think so, but Lachine joined, I think in 2010 or
I
something
think
like that.
2008 maybe, but
8, maybe.
I think they go
Yeah,
to
I think so.
use the West at one point before
But-
coming back.
so
yeah, could be, or in 2000, yes, in that range, yeah.
right. So the facilities of the MGH, of the RVH, of whatever, those have not been independent institutions
No,
with users that would have been allowed to have per the act institution users committees for
no, not under the present act, no.
right. And the
The-
present
Those
act-
legally are just like subcommittees, the
right.
creation of the users committee. It's a
I
creation.
didn't realize with Barrett, what you were saying is that they sort of grandfathered some users committees to continue as users committees.
Yeah. But by doing that, he was not grandfathering the RVH users committee.
Oh, he was
Because-
grandfathered the ones that are now mixed within the CUSM.
Yeah, because they did not, they had no legal standing even then.
Right, so there is no argument whatsoever per the act for any of these facilities, even though they may stand alone, to have their own users committee.
No,
Okay.
who's saying that?
Oh, you can imagine who's saying, I mean, every site user committee, who.
They're still saying that?
They are, we are meeting with them, Deborah and I, on Friday, because they are demanding autonomy.
Well,
We're our own entity, we're autonomous, we're users. Difficult.
It's nonsense.
We had a meeting with all of them. I thought I made it clear. I was just confirming that information with you. And I thought I did it in a very,
Well,
building way. And yet this sense of whatever, this viewpoint persists.
Well, at the beginning, I give a little bit of history of the users committee at the MUHC. And I mentioned 2005, 2006, when every institution was obliged to have a users committee and one per institution. That was 2006. I mean, I came in, I think, around 2008 to the MUHC, but the users committee, there was nobody from the RVH on the users committee because they were fighting with the MGH. And I think I saw a member from the RVH in one or two general annual meetings, and they were they were very nasty, and it was fight all the time, fight and fight and fight.
I don't understand how these committees have been allowed to run for so long with this sense of autonomy and a sense of entitlement to funding.
Like I said, if you look at this history of the MUHC, it's not, I'm not really up to the facts at this moment, but for a long time, foundations were with installations. There was an RVH foundation, there was a Chest Foundation. Now they have a MUHC Foundation, but even though they had that MUHC Foundation, I know that for a while, I don't know now exactly, but I think there's still a foundation at the MGH.
There are still individual.
So you see, it's very difficult to bring together these very old institutions who have their own history. There's a history for the foundation of the RVH, which is different from the Montreal General Hospital. And it's a culture that's there, and that there's a sense of belonging more to the RVH than to the MUHC. And it's very difficult to, and I don't know why. It's I think there is something cultural also with the English. You know why? Because it's interesting, because it's I'm thinking about what Monsieur Legault said during the weekend about religion and Easter and Catholicism. I don't know if you read about this. I think he's totally nuts and wrong. But I mean, it's not true to say that there's more solidarity within the French Catholic community than within the English Protestant or the Jewish or whatever. That's it. It doesn't stand to any serious examination. I mean, as a matter of fact, the difference is that in the French, it's more institutionalized. And religion and politics were more together in the history of Quebec. And it's the institutions, it's not the people. If you look at the foundation of the RVH, it's a bunch of rich philanthropists, Anglophone, who decided that they would have their own hospital on the mountain and not go to the general. So there's a lot of philanthropy in the English Protestant milieu, because the church is not as controlling as the Catholic Church was in Quebec. So if you look at the CUSM, again, it's more French speaking, and they don't have that kind of, they identify, and I worked many times with the users committee at the CUSM, and they don't have that kind of issue, because for them it's one institution, that's it, that's all.
Yeah, I think there's certain things about CUSM that make it so much easier, is that it's physically in the same building, number one. They didn't leave satellite adult hospitals.
No.
It separated the adult from the kids, and they merged physically all the adults. And I think that psychologically does make a difference.
Yeah, it does.
You're right. People become very attached to their hospitals. It's very emotional.
Yeah.
You are at, this is healthcare we're talking about, not, a Hudson Bay store on a or that you may be attached. I mean, so there is much more emotion involved.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, they managed to merge every board of board. When it merged, the MGH used to have its board of directors, and it's gone. Used to have its director of professional services, it's gone. Used to be the chief of surgery at the general. There's a single chief of surgery for MUHC. Every clinical department adapted and pulled up their socks and got on with the job of caring for patients. And yet users committees are bickering bitterly. It's baffling to me.
Yeah, well, some people, I would say.
Some, yes.
Yeah.
But enough so that we haven't merged and reconstructed and reconfigured the same way boards of
Well-
directors, other administration, clinical departments, everybody else has managed to do it. And it's not, hasn't
It's too
happened.
bad because it doesn't serve patients.
It doesn't.
No.
Anyway, okay, so anyway, I'll let, because
But anyhow, they have no right.
no,
They have
that's,
no right. So you have to, no,
I did kindly and politely, and it has not been very effective. And, it's fantastic. I just keep blaming the act insofar as I say, I must conform to the dictates of the act. This is these are the rules. I didn't make
that's
them.
it, that's all.
And, well, easy to
They
say.
don't, they don't seem very receptive to that explanation.
Either they
Well-
don't understand or they're purposely not,
What other explanation do they have?
we
What's
want
the foundation of their argument?
First of all, history.
Well,
Second of all, representation of their unique population that the larger board doesn't have because they're not on site. So there are lots of arguments being thrown our way, and it's consuming a lot of our time, I must say.
well,
anyway. Okay, I'm gonna.
if I were you, I would just say, well, okay, do you have specific projects? Bring them on. Otherwise, no money, no candy. That's it.
This is literally in a slightly nicer way, but that is precisely how we presented. We met with them just to present, this is the structure. We're following the act. We encourage as much activity as possible. If you have a project, come for fun. I mean, anyway, we've been through all of it, but it hasn't gone
yeah.
over necessarily well with certain committees.
Yeah.
There's certain personalities possibly involved who have other agendas. I don't know. Anyway, but anyway, I'm going to let Alex and Shari go, and we can just continue just very quickly. I'll update you about